All right, welcome back. Just a short time ago, Chinese leader Xi Jinping greeted Russian President Vladimir Putin in Beijing as he kicked off a two-day state visit. The two have had their first summit and signed a joint declaration, hoping to show the world that their close ties are getting stronger. All of this, of course, in the shadow of Russia's latest attacks in Ukraine, bringing Putin international scorn. CNN's Mark Stewart joins us live now from Beijing. Mark, good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here. What is the overall goal here, and what are the implications for the West?
Good morning, Casey. I think first and foremost, it's about this idea of mutual admiration for each other from a military standpoint, from a political standpoint, and from a strategic standpoint. And that was very obvious today. We've been watching these images come in. There was this red carpet welcome for Vladimir Putin. There has been so much military pageantry. But let's make it clear, this is not a visit just between Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and to show off this no-limits partnership between China and Russia. This is very much a way to snub the West and the United States, especially as China really tries to assert itself as this leader in a new world order of sorts, a different way of viewing the world than the West. On this topic of Ukraine, which is, of course, at center of so many of these observations, it's the fact that Xi Jinping and China has not condemned the war in Ukraine. It is saying that it's a neutral observer in all of this. In fact, Xi Jinping is calling for peace talks, or has suggested that at one point. In fact, I heard from one source here on the ground in mainland China who suggested that Xi Jinping very much would like to be a peace negotiator between Russia and Ukraine. So in many ways, this is also tilting to a beneficial relationship for China. With all of that said, Vladimir Putin did not travel alone. He brought top military advisors with him. He brought top security advisors with him. So this is going to be very much an involved conversation between all of these different parties, not only about the war with Ukraine, but also the worldview and the conflict in Gaza. I should also point out, Casey, of course, it is evening now here in China. It's Thursday, and the two men will celebrate this relationship, 75 years of diplomatic ties between China and Russia at a gala that is set for this evening here in Beijing.
With all eyes on Ukraine's Kharkiv region, there are concerns Russia could take advantage of the moment to mount a new push along Ukraine's eastern front lines. CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh is on the ground in central Ukraine with more.
What we're seeing actually in the north in Kharkiv is a bid to try and draw Ukraine's limited resources away from the Donetsk front lines and enable Russia to get gains in that Donetsk area where it's been moving pretty fast forward over the past months or so. Now, they took Avdiivka, a key town there, back in February, and they've since been edging forwards, and they've got some key parts of Ukraine's military infrastructure in that region in their sights. Towns like Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, Pokrovsk. These are all essential to Ukraine's military operations there. And now the unthinkable is happening, where the Russians are taking field after field, small, tiny villages you wouldn't know of, frankly, where maybe hundreds of people lived before the war broke out. They're taking one after another after another. Ukrainians are struggling to hold their lines there. And that's really leaving this significant eastern front, fought over since 2014, deeply vulnerable to Russian strategic advances. The summer's ahead of them. Yes, Western weapons will start coming in the next month or so, but the Russians have momentum here and they spot a window of acute Ukrainian weakness and they're exploiting that. But the key thing to remember here, because this was essentially avoidable, they've ended up getting that $61 billion. The 5 or 6 months delay in it has caused the damage to morale, damage to manpower, damage to the capacity on the front lines, and they've lost a lot of territory. So they're going to go into the summer hugely on a back foot, with territory they could have kept taken back and given to Russia, and Putin feeling that his war, after the narrative for well over a year being that they were faltering and just expending endless amounts of manpower and resources to take tiny amounts of territory, now Moscow can point to key and at times even strident success, because the West frankly hasn't been looking so hard and they've taken advantage of that.
When nightmares recur, they're often the same. Here, they get worse. The border town of Vovchansk bearing the blunt horror of Moscow's race to take as much as they can in the weeks before Ukraine starts feeling American military help again. Every street aflame, Russians deeper inside the town. Policeman Maxim is answering one of 35 calls from locals on Thursday to evacuate. The day before, 3 colleagues were injured. The shelling never stops.
Тихо, 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 все просили.
3 people still coming out, and you have to imagine quite how desperate for these final people the situation must be to leave.
Mykola and his wife hiding in their basement, but despite staying through the first Russian occupation and then liberation 2 years ago, they found the airstrikes last night just too much. They're joined by Maria, their mother, who can't hear the shelling or anything too well. Thousands evacuated since Russia invaded again around here 5 days ago. Why everyone has to leave is clear again as we drive out, as it is with almost every part of Ukraine Russia covets. Just utter destruction, little left to rule over. This is their first moment of calm in many days. Entire lives in plastic bags.
She's saying it wasn't like last night was scary and everyone else was talking about significant bombardment, more that it was just better to get out of there. 85.
An armoured ride to a new world, knowing they may never get back to their homes, tormented for days by shelling.
Авиабомбы, все, что хочешь. Минометы.
Видели русских солдаты?
Нет.
Слышали?
Мы? Нет. Стрелять там, с той стороны. За речкой.
За речкой, да?
А мы ж сюда, на севере города. То, що стріляли, вони близько вже стріляли. З автоматів, з чого хочеш.
We head back in with another police unit, who soon learn 2 of the houses they must rescue from are impossible to reach. As we wait,
Дрон, да?
they hear a buzzing noise.
They think they can hear a drone here. So hard to tell with the wind in the trees and the artillery, but that's a constant threat for them now.
Then our security advisor spots it. They raise their weapons, but will firing make them more of a target? 3 drones, 1 large one that hovers, and 2 small ones whizzing about. Exposed, powerless. If we run for cover, they might come for us. All we can do is hide in the trees and hope that if we are seen, the Russians instead have a better target in mind. But they come right overhead. That noise,
In the car and move, they say.
either the sound of death or someone deciding you're not worth their payload. We decide to leave, but again, we cannot travel fast enough to escape the drones, only expose ourselves and pray they lose interest. Perhaps they did, we'll never know. But behind us, Ukraine is aflame again, because however the West's interest in this war wanes, Putin's burns brighter than ever. Nick Payton-Walsh, CNN, Vovchansk, Ukraine. Dusk begins a race to hide before dark. It's this drone unit's first night in a new location. The twilight. A tiny window when perhaps you can unpack, set up without the Russian drones that are always, always above, seeing you as clearly. Like so much in this fast-changing war, their task was unimaginable when Moscow invaded. Their target is on the horizon, Russia itself, into which they fly and plant mines on key roads. They wait for dark.
Those lights twinkling over there on the horizon, that's Belgorod, Russia. How close they're operating towards Russian mainland.
Putin's latest offensive towards Kharkiv has made the fight personal for Artyom. His parents live about a 5-minute drive away, and fighting for his literal home is unsettling.
Волнительно, на самом-то деле. Они, 1,5 года не знали вообще, что я в боевой бригаде, что я под Бахмутом воюю. Я рассказал, что на блокпосты охраняю.
And now, for the first of many times, their only defence is to listen for drones.
Назад. Орлан летит. Прям над нами летит. Орлан.
It passes. Now it is dark, they must hurry.
Спокойно.
Russian drones have thermal cameras. They hear another.
Тихо. Лети. No lights.
Battles raging nearby may help them go unnoticed. They resume. Any strike could also ignite the 2 mines they're fitting. But they hear another drone.
Бегом. Не даст нормально поработать, тварь. Ты сейчас...
Such an escalation over 2 years into the war. To now see Ukrainians flying drones of explosive straight into Russia.
Inside, Sasha watches it cross the border.
Ну все, кордон проходить.
Ти паспорт взяв сам?
У мене безвіз.
GPS ban. Communication lost.
Remarkably, when Russian jamming kicks in, the drone keeps going,
EKF primary changed :2.
and they're able to pick the signal up again, deeper inside Russia. They spot the target road they will mine, drop both payloads, and head back. A GPS problem means the drone crash lands, but they have a spare. They once, elsewhere, managed 24 sorties in one night. But they have to be spotted only once, and these shells may not pass overhead. We leave. Quick! Go! Lights off at first to avoid drones. The road littered with anti-tank defences, not laid out in time to hinder Russia's latest advance. And now they have only courage and ingenuity to hold back the dark. Nick Payton-Walsh, CNN, outside Kharkiv, Ukraine.